everyone. Welcome back to the MTG Goldfish Podcast, episode 110. Your weekly Magic the Gathering podcast covering everything, well, Magic the Gathering. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, mtggoldfish.com, and now on YouTube. Joining me, as always, Richard, the owner of MTG Goldfish. How are you, Richard?
Hey, guys. What's up?
Doing well. The dedication. I love it, Richard.
I haven't showered in like 3 days. Sit out here in the middle of the desert, and yet I'm still looking at Modern Masters spoiler popping up.
Is beaming in. Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, our resident jank brewer and all-around Magic the Gathering content creator. What's up, Seth?
What's up, guys? Ready to talk some Modern Masters. This set looks insane.
So hyped. And Chaz, as always, just general content creator for Magic the Gathering, focusing on the financial aspect. So, on the docket, Modern Masters 2017, we're just going to jump into the spoilers. We have a lot to talk about. A lot of some general meta things about, Modern Masters. Whenever this time rolls around, it's good to talk through a few different points. That will lead us into an interesting conversation, Seth, that we had over Twitter this morning about data discussion, and then we'll wrap things up with fish mail. No gold fishing this week. We want to just keep it a little bit shorter. We did have a few longer casts there, so we will have that back for next week. We just want to get things going because Rich is on borrowed time. So let's just jump right in. Modern Masters 2017. What do you think so far, Richard, out there in the desert?
So, I popped into Starbucks, crawled out of the desert, and then boom, Damnation. Right? Enemy Fetches, Goblin Guide, Restoration Angel, and then I guess we got Guild Gates and Tri-Lands at common and uncommon. But everyone's going nuts. The value is off the charts, and I think if we just stopped here, people would be satisfied. I think we got everything we wanted, right? Damnation, Fetch Lands, Goblin Guide. I guess we need Liliana and Snapcaster. But so far, we're off to a big start. Everyone is hyped. People are looking at those boxes at 180 with a second look now, and I think people are really hyped for Modern Masters. I think Wizards spoiled the cards in the right order because everyone is pretty hyped.
Well said. Seth, what do you think? You've been kind of keeping track of where we are in terms of value.
Oh, well, I mean, so far the set's insane. I figured it out earlier, and right now, at current prices, so before prices drop and whatnot, the average rare value is something like $44, which obviously will go down. We have a lot of the most high-value rares possible already revealed, but you could literally have every other rare be bulk, and the rares would still have an average value of like $750 or something, which is insane. Like it's looking like the value of this set's gonna be incredibly high, maybe even more than Modern Masters, the original Modern Masters, which is super exciting. This is literally like every modern card so far that people wanted is all of a sudden showing up in this set, which is super sweet. I'm a little nervous about the supply. Like, that's my concern. With Modern Masters, the original, there was some really feel bad situations where boxes were like $400 because the supply was so low, and then Modern Masters 2 was like the opposite, and the set wasn't very good, and no one really bought them, and it was cheap. So I'm hopeful that they're going to print this in enough supply that people are actually going to be able to buy some boxes, because it looks like an awesome set for people to buy and probably draft with as well. There's so much mana fixing, and there's going to be crazy 5-color decks, so I'm really hopeful all around. I just hope there's enough supply that players actually get to play with the set.
Yeah, I think that's really the question here, and I have to say it's already exceeded my expectations, and we were all I think we were all blindsided, especially us, because we just had this discussion. We did not think Fetch Lands would be in there. I did not think Fetch Lands would be in there, but I think it's a good thing that Fetch Lands are in there. Obviously, you have to sell the set. It really makes sense. I didn't think they would do it, but they went ahead and done it, and it just really makes sense. And there's a few other kind of storylines you can actually go from there just by looking at the Fetch Lands in Modern Masters 2017, which we can discuss. But so far, I mean, you're absolutely right, Seth. The value is already in there. A few more key inclusions, and we pretty much have a really well-rounded set, even if the rest of the cards are stinkers. I mean, it's already, selling into, everyone's hyped, everyone's buying up the boxes, and I do think, the thing is, I think the supply is there. I'm getting kind of some mixed reports that there's more, or maybe just a little bit more than Modern Masters 2015, but the allocation's different. So some people may have thought originally that there's just like this ton of supply, but only the premier stores are getting like so much more than before. So it's kind of creating this illusion that there's somehow more of them. But I mean, we could run into an Eternal Masters where we just get another like whole, like, here's a Christmas print run or something like that. So you never, or a summer print run or something like that. So you never know.
And I mean, the big thing is these are all rares. Every card we're talking about, Damnation, Fetches, Goblin Guide, that's the rare slot. And one of the biggest complaints overall from the last Modern Masters was it was extremely heavily weighted towards Mythics. There were really expensive Mythics, but most of the packs you opened just weren't worth it, and they felt really bad. Actually, on average, you could do an entire draft and crack 3 packs and end up with all bulk rares. It was like a normal outcome, because unless you were getting lucky and getting a mythic, you were pretty much only had a couple of possible options that were really going to be worth it in the rare slot. This kind of flips that on its head, that whole situation. So now there's going to be a lot of good opens because the good cards are in the rare slot. So even if we end up with a bunch of Domri raids at Mythic that aren't really that valuable, that's, I think, actually a good thing from the perspective of players, because you get more consistent value by having good rares than having these really crazy high-end Mythics.
All right, hold up. Negative Richard has to come in here. Negative Richard. What do you guys feel about enemy fetches? Yeah, it's great that we get enemy fetches, but they're in this limited print run product, right? They're not going to be as cheap as the cons fetches. And I don't know, like, where do you think Scalding Tarn will end up? Do you think people will even put Scalding Tarns in their decks? Because I predict the price will not drop that much. And you get this kind of unbalanced mana base still, where you have a ton of supply of cons fetches, and then this very limited supply of, I guess, the Modern Masters 3 fetches now.
What was the retail before the announcement? Like 60?
Tarn was 79.
Star City's already pre-ordering them for $49.99, just to give you like a number.
So compare that to $10 polluted deltas or whatever when cons came out, right?
Right. I mean, obviously they're not going to be cons fetches, but I think this is an indicator that they don't want they want fetches in these kind of sets and not in standard anymore. I think they tried the experiment. They don't want fetches in standard anymore, so they're just going to push them into these Modern Masters product at rare to really sell $10 packs. I mean, this is, and you said it best, Seth. I mean, this is really what people wanted, and we've talked about through this, and you can go far back into the podcast history when we talked about Modern Masters 2015. I mean, there's still a lot of product out there, but no one bought it. I mean, this is what sells this type of product. So I'm okay with them putting it in here, but I did not see this coming in the slightest. I thought maybe the filter lands, which still would have been pretty good, stuff like Horizon Canopy, Cavernous Souls, which could still be in there, but those would have been enough to even still continue to sell. But these, I think there's enough to kind of soak up a lot of the demand.
It's going to be interesting. I just did some research on price drops for my article that came out last night, and pretty much like 50%, like a half decrease, is where most of the big cards land for Modern Masters. So that's essentially what I would expect. We'll see Scalding Tarns maybe in the $40-ish price range. The other ones, which are like around $60, maybe around $30. So they're not going to be as cheap as the cons fetches, but that's still a pretty reasonable discount. I think for me, the big question is what this means going forward. And I think I see 2 potential paths forward. One is Wizards uses fetches in this limited supply set to sell the set, make a bunch of money, and then cashes out the rest of their equity by putting them in a standard set in the next year or two. The other thing, and I want to hear your guys' opinions on this, with the way this set is looking, and it's still early, and we could get a whole bunch of bulk, and the hype dies down, but the way this set is looking, it's looking like they just pulled out all the stops and put every card people have been asking for Modern for years into this set. Why are they doing this now after a pretty tepid Modern Masters 2015 edition? Why are they doing this now when they're like in some ways pulling support from the format? Is this a sign that they're just like cashing out in Modern altogether, and we're going to see the Frontier or pseudo Frontier announcement and have Frontier Masters in 2019 or something? Like, what pathway forward is this going?
jumping the gun here. Damnation
Yeah,
Fever.
yeah.
The only card we've seen is like Damnation and Goblin Guide. We knew Fetches would be reprinted at some point. Goblin Guide's been on the to-do list, and of course Damnation's been on the to-do list forever. So I think it's too early to jump the gun. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if, say, Liliana the Veil was somehow excluded from the set. You know, we haven't seen Snapcaster, although that's a shoo-in. So I don't know that they're cashing in yet. Like, is this any different than the first Modern Masters? You know, you can only go so far putting Comet Storms in your set, right? And maybe Wizards realized this, and now they gave us good cards.
Yep.
But there's plenty of room for disappointing mythics, and there's plenty of room for disappointing rares.
Yeah, there still is, but I think it will still be well-rounded. And the key thing here, and like you said, Seth, a lot of this stuff is at rare. So they're kind of, you know, shoring up that middle ground where you're opening up these packs and you're getting more value in the rares and not so top heavy. So it's not like every other pack just seems like completely, or maybe not even every other pack. Like most packs just seem like not worth it for $10. I think they're overcompensating, and you know, contrary to popular belief, they actually do listen to players sometimes to make good executive decisions to put cards like this to sell the product and to sell Modern to people. And it can still be a thriving format even if they're kind of pulling back the reins on the support of the format at a high level. And you know how you do that? It's kind of a 1-2 punch here. You don't have it as Pro Tour, so you don't have these wacky bannings and price spikes and all that, you know, has to do with a Pro Tour, because we all know that happens. And you print actually good cards in a supplemental product like Modern Masters. That's how that's how you lower the barrier.
To Seth's first point, I think this is the new Tarmogoyf. This, you know, the fetch lands will be in Modern Masters 2019. The price will be high. Put it in again, and boom, instant bestseller. So I think we're going to see fetches for the foreseeable future in Masters products. If they're not willing to put them in standard sets now, I don't see them doing it in the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this really, it comes down to, this was the best product to put it in. I mean, we've talked about this almost ad nauseum, but I mean, short of a standard set, where else do you put fetches? Well, you put them in a supplemental product to sell it format.
From the vault, fetches.
I mean, you could do that, I guess, but
And then it's like Evolving Wilds.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, the Mirage tapped fetches.
I do think, I do appreciate, because it always is good to look to the future, Seth. I do think there's a lot of variables that we can't really, you know, look at now. And I'm kind of leaning with Richard here, where we might be jumping the gun a little bit. I don't know, like, putting fetches into Modern Masters 2017 equates to everything that you were talking about.
All right, well, let me, and you're probably right, but let me just go through my thought process.
Sure.
We've seen that they've been pulling back a bit on Modern support. We spent a whole cast talking about that from Wizards' perspective. We also, at least in my opinion, I think the way they make the most money off of fetches is putting them in a standard legal set. Because you don't have the supply constraint that you get with Modern Masters. You can theoretically just sell more and more and more of that standard set when you get capped out with a Masters set, because it's limited supply. And we also have Marrow saying that if he was running a Frontier format, along with saying that they think they'll have some format like that eventually, he wouldn't want fetches in it. He doesn't think that's the right way for that format to be. So by moving fetches to Modern Masters, you theoretically no longer have to put them in standard sets, which I think they like anyway, which also opens the door for a Magic Origins forward format that cuts out cons and becomes the new Frontier with no fetches, because they don't have the pressure to put them in a standard set to get the supply up anymore. So it might be a tinfoil hat thing, but all of those things together,
I'm all for the tinfoil hat.
make me think things point in that direction somehow.
But this theory doesn't make any sense, because if we're saying Wizards is pulling back on Modern support because it doesn't sell, why would they be so trigger happy on Frontier? Because it's also, you know, a non-limited and non-standard format. Why would they want to support it? Right? I think they will support it when the players force their hands, right? When the players protest enough and complain enough that they have to make it a sanctioned format. But I don't think they'll just run in and replace Modern, because they don't want a Frontier Pro Tour. They don't want Frontier at the highest levels of play. Like, what is the point of supporting this thing? So it has the exact same downsides as Modern, according to Wizards. Actually, even worse, right? Because you can't even make a Frontier Master set to sell expensive staples. So I don't think Wizards wants to jump the gun and kill Modern and support Frontier.
Yeah, I mean, this is all kind of like going way out there to kind of analyze just one set, but my view is that they pulled back the support for Modern. And when I say that, I mean, people kind of misconstrued what we said on the podcast and all that. Like, it's not dead by any means. I think it's still very successful, obviously. It doesn't need to be at the Pro Tour to be successful. I think they wanted to kind of buoy Standard a little bit more because it's been struggling, and they've always supported Standard. Like, literally, I think we said this again on the podcast not too long ago, that they've always kind of propped up Standard forever. So it's nothing new. How you lower the barrier is you don't prop up Modern. It's almost better that the pros aren't like kind of messing with this format too much at the Pro Tour at a high level, and it lets them reprint all these cards and lower the barrier of entry. If everyone likes Modern so much, well, then you get the benefit of it not being at the Pro Tour and influencing the market so much and causing all this wackiness, and you get to push out more product like this.
Just seems so strange to me that we had like zero hype for this set going up until today, essentially. Like, not a peep out of Wizards. No, they were talking Amonkhet and like other stuff, and then they apparently knew the whole time that it was going to be this super crazy thing with fetchlands and damnations and all this stuff that is somewhat surprising and really exciting. So it's just, the whole situation just feels odd to me. Like, I don't know why they didn't hype it.
That's by design. That's by design. It has to be.
Marketing genius. Genius.
Exactly. How do you create hype? Make no hype at all. Like, you literally don't talk about something, and then when something exceeds expectations, I mean, I even sent out a tweet about this. I think people were down on the set because they had this like preconceived notion that they can't make a good Modern Master set, and then boom, there you go. Here's fetches, here's a Goblin Guide, here's Damnation, probably a bunch of other nice stuff in there, and everyone's happy. You don't even need to like market it at all because it's going to do it. It's going to do that itself.
Well, tinfoil hat theories aside, I am very happy, and this set looks. I said on Twitter, I think this looks like the best potential, at least. It's still early, but to be the best Modern Masters set they've printed. Period. Even better than the first one. Like, I think.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
that there's a realistic shot that happens. So I'm really.
I mean, it's already better than Modern Masters 2015. I don't even think like that was even hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, they could print the rest of the cards as bulk, and it would still probably be better than 2015, which was a little disappointing, but I'm super excited for it, and as long as this supply is somewhat reasonable, this is going to do a lot of what people wanted with lowering that barrier to entry into Modern.
Yeah, let me touch on that actually a little bit. Despite, I mean, even if it's a still pretty big quantity of supply, you should not wait forever. Like, I mean, history and data shows that a lot of these staples in these sets do come at a discount for a little while, and they almost always trend back in the other direction. I mean, some of the stuff like Stoic Angel and Restoration Angel and maybe even Goblin Guide, like, yeah, that'll probably be, you're going to have a pretty big price reduction on those for quite some times, but hot, items like Fetchlands and Damnation and I'm sure a few, marquee mythics and Snapcaster Mage, like those won't stay discounted forever because when you release sets like this, it creates renewed interest, and then everyone's scrambling for these cards, and then all of a sudden, 6 months from now, you're looking at, not maybe back to where they were, but pretty close. The good thing is it's selling. The issue with we saw this a lot in Modern Masters 2015 where almost all the cards rebounded. I mean, even like Tezzeret, just because no one was buying the set.
Yeah. And I mean, as long as there is enough for people to buy and we don't run into the original Modern Masters problem where you literally just could not get a box because they were so scarce and so expensive, then I think that people are definitely going to buy this product. There's no doubt about that. The other thing is, I've heard some people saying, oh, the supply is going to be huge. Don't worry about buying a box right now. Like, you'll get one later. You can already get boxes for like $180 on Mass Drop and some other places. And no matter how big the supply is with this set, I can't imagine that you're going to do significantly better than that.
No, I mean, you should be pulling the trigger like now.
So if you want
for a paycheck or whatever. But,
if you want a box, like 180 is a great price with what we've seen so far.
You can be risky and wait for an eBay deal. That's
You
another
could do that.
$15 off.
You could do that, but
I don't
yeah.
think they're going to get any cheaper.
No.
You're going to need a special deal to get a better rate than this, especially since we still have another week of spoilers to go. Like, imagine if Liliana and Snapcaster are confirmed. Imagine the hype on these boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Just a quick question, just to wrap things up, though. Seth, you were pretty blindsided by these fetches. You sent out a couple of tweets. So are you in the camp now that we won't see fetches in standard formats, or do you think that still could possibly be a thing?
I mean, I think that it's still possible, but seeing them show up in the Masters Edition set I think it could be a signal that Wizards is really serious about not putting them in Standard anymore. Like, they've said that they don't really like them in Standard or want them in Standard, right. But I think their love for making money gets the better of them, and they're like, oh, this is like such an easy way to sell a set. We'll just bite the bullet and do it. But the fact that they are intentionally putting them in Modern Masters when they could have put them in Amonkhet and made even more money theoretically makes me think they're really serious about keeping them out of Standard moving forward.
Yeah, I do think it leads a little bit into that tinfoil hat like theories of a new format, which I do think at some point it's definitely possible to keep fetch lands pretty much out of Standard. My whole thing was, I believe if they took a shot at a new format, it would be 2 set blocks forward, and it will still take like maybe a couple of years. Because I mean, to me, and this is them saying this, that each of these sets is so successful and they don't have fetches in them. Like, they said Battle for Zendikar was successful. They said like Shadows over Innistrad was successful. So if all of these sets are successful without fetches, I don't see the need to throw them in there if they're already doing well.
Yeah, but I mean, sooner or later they'll have a set that's kind of blah, and they're like, we don't have any great mechanics. Like, we kind of want to like go on vacation for a couple weeks.
Yeah, but then that
Let's
ruins
just throw
like the new format.
Let's just throw fetches
once they're
in there.
Once they're in there, they're in there. So it kind of just ruins the whole like design theory.
That's true. But I thought you said
I mean, you can't undo it.
I thought you said I was crazy and that wasn't what was happening, Chaz. Are you on board with the tinfoil hat theory now?
No. I agreed with you on that point. I'm just saying I don't know if we can come to that conclusion like right now.
I gotcha.
But I can see us talking about this in episode 200. All right, moving on. So this is honestly a lot from you, Seth, this morning on social media. You talked about data and what it does for the game. So why don't you just, I'm sure a lot of people follow you, so they know what you're talking about, but please explain it for everyone else that listens.
Okay, well, it basically started, someone sent out a tweet last night. Oh, man, I cannot find the tweet. To give you the person's name, Chris, I want to say Mosconi or something like that, but someone sent out a tweet saying basically they thought that Wizards should stop releasing Moto decks, like decks at 5.0 leagues and so forth, because that solves the format too quickly. And just having too much data leads to these solve formats, and I am a big supporter of data, so I said that I think that that's silly, and that I think that this format's getting solved is more of a design issue than a Wizards releasing deck list issue. Like, just having players pushed into specific obvious decks, like vehicles, for example. Like, you just take every card that says vehicles on it and throw it in a deck, and you have a tier 1 deck. Or energy, if it says energy, you play it with Aetherworks Marvel, and you have a tier 1 deck. That it's more of that issue than the data itself. And also that I think that getting rid of data widens the gaps between aspiring pros and grinders and real pros who have testing teams to generate their own data, essentially, and skip over the fact that Wizards wouldn't be releasing data. So, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on data? Are we having solved or bad standard formats because we have so much data now, or is it something else that's leading to our current standard formats?
Interesting. For someone that runs a data-driven site, I would like to hear your response, Richard.
So I used to be firmly in Seth's camp, but after doing this for quite a long time and ironically running the site that provides so much data, I'm starting to see the WotC point of view. I do think that having so much data, quote-unquote, ruins the format. I think we can all agree that, let's say, the first 2-3 weeks of a new standard are the best weeks. when there aren't established decks. Everyone is brewing, everyone is trying things. There's not a lot of data, and people generally have fun. And then Pro Tour happens, and then suddenly it's the worst standard we've ever seen ever, right? And that is you can see directly that the Pro Tour releases data. By that point, we have a week or two of motor results, and then the format kind of gets solved. If you think back to the last good standard, it was before the rise of all these sites that had all this data. So in that sense, I agree. Like, if you look at Frontier, a lot of people like it because it's a quote unquote brewer's paradise, because we don't have deck lists, because there are no pros brewing. So yeah, like in the perfect world, Wizards will make the perfect standard that has infinite possibilities. But let's be real, they hit that like once, in 10 tries or something. Most of the other times it's a okay standard or an above average standard, but it gets solved too quickly. Now, having said that, if you take away data from everyone, everyone will riot, we'll all hate it, and we'll all try to find that data anyway. So I think it's like prohibition, right? Drinking is probably bad. It causes so many problems to society. But you can't take away drinking, right? Like, you just can't anymore. It's kind of in there. So it's kind of like that. Like, you just can't take the data away. We're used to it. We want it, and we're gonna seek it. So even though it's probably bad for us, we're gonna go for it. So I don't know that Wizards can do anything at this point, but I do think pushing back the Pro Tour to make it naturally or something would help. But going around and banning sites or removing their moto lists, I think will cause a big uproar. And I'm saying that not just as the owner of MTG Goldfish, but just as like a normal player. I'd be like, what the heck, guys? Like, we want data, make a better standard, blah blah blah. But I think they're in a lose-lose situation at this point.
I think you really nailed everything on the head, Richard. Basically everything I was kind of mulling over, and we had a few tweets back and forth about this, Seth, because I think you're right. I mean, as data is there and people are going to find it no matter what, I think you really can't pull it. Like Richard said, it's there, it's in there. You can't really take it away now that people have gotten used to that fact. Does it have? I mean, I can't. I can obviously see the issues that come along with that. I'm with you, Richard. I mean, I'm not expecting Ravnica Time Spiral or Ravnica Kamigawa's standards anymore. Like that, they hit it every so once in a while where you do have these really diverse standards, regardless if there's so many people and all this data and everyone's brewing. You just have so many different decks. That's just not something we see all the time anymore. And, I get it, but I mean, it's not something I think is going to change now, and people are kind of just used to it.
I want to ask you this, Richard. What do you think about the Moto list? Would getting rid of the Moto daily events, or some number, or the leagues rather now, would getting rid of some or all of those results, would that even do anything, or would we just be in the same place, but it would be the paper results, SCG results, Pro Tour GP results? Yeah. Would that even help anything really to not have just the Moto data?
Yeah, I mean, I think removing the hurt more, because you're right, everyone would just flock to the paper events. But today, the Moto results kind of give you that innovation. Like you see with our instant deck text, right? You find some weird janky deck that 5-0'd, and you look at it like, oh, okay, I see this idea, and then you build on it. So in that sense, it's very helpful. And we, as long as we're publishing top 32, top 64, 6+ win decks, whatever, from Pro Tours, Star City Games events, the data will be there. It will just come slower, and people will just put more weight on it. So the only way to make it a brewer's paradise is to go back to 1995 and just not publish any lists whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think even if you didn't publish anything, I mean,
then we'd get reporters, right? We'd have the Goldfish reporting team on the floor. At
right. Well, not even that.
Yeah,
and not even above that. I mean, people don't realize it worked back then because the player base was like a fifth of the size, right? There's so many more people playing the game now that the information is going to get out or release into the wild one way or another. And whether it's Wizards reporting it or Goldfish reporting it or any other place reporting it.
And there's too many player types, right? The Spikes want the lists, right? Like, they don't care about whatever innovation came up with. Just give me the best list, and I will pilot it to perfection.
Yeah.
Whereas the Johnnies want to brew. They're like, no, don't give me these lists. So you have these competing player bases as well. So it's just a lose-lose. They can't really do anything at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm get mad, right?
Right. I never really. I don't. I mean, this day and age, like back then, I was like, oh yeah, like brew, and there's all this stuff. There's all these decks, and I loved it. Like the two best standards to me. I mean, you had all these decks. That could still happen just by design, but again, like when I hear Brewers Paradise these days with so many people playing the game, like it's almost impossible now. Like it's cool, like Richard said, it's cool for the first few weeks, and then everybody's playing it. So then everyone kind of already figures everything out, regardless if there's information. And even if like the top 5%, even if that stayed the same, like the top 5% are GP grinders and pros and all that, like that is substantially larger now than it was before. So you still have X amount of people at the top brewing all these decks and figuring out like really what the best combination of cards are for any given format.
And I mean, the other thing that we've kind of left out is the world is different than it was in 1995.
Yes.
Like, we have the internet. You see this in the real world with wiki links and fake news and propaganda. Like, information is out there whether people want it to be or not. That's just the world we live in with the internet. So in some sense, I don't know how Wizards can win the battle against the internet when the United States government and all these other places, like, you just can't do it. Like, that's the world we live in now. So it's unrealistic to expect us to go back to 1995 when no one has any deck lists and so forth. That's just not the world we live in with our current technology.
So here's a funny coincidence. I just launched Poke Goldfish, which is the Pokemon equivalent of MTG Goldfish, because there were no deck lists. This game is like 10 plus years old. There's no website that aggregates tournament results, so you can't find what the best decks are. And the best decks are paywalled behind premium articles. So I launched that site, and immediately all this feedback. Everyone's like, thanks, we didn't have this data. Well, thank God you came and saved us, and all this stuff. Like, people are itching for this metagame data. And
yeah,
I think I ruined Pokemon, right? Like, I don't know, right?
Yeah, and like,
but now
Richard,
you didn't even available at the snap of your hands, right?
Yeah, but you didn't even need to like dress it up. You literally had like a basic page just with the decks on it, and everyone just went nuts.
Yeah, and that's what people want. Like, they want data and they want to make informed decisions. Although it may lead to a stale standard or something, it leads to the downfall of it. But people want to be in control. They don't want stuff hidden from them. They want the data, and they want to do stuff with it.
You know what it is, and this is honestly a point that I was kind of thinking over too. You know what it is, and I get it because I'm a player also. People want to bring the deck that no one is playing and kind of just like destroy an FNM or a GP and all that. Like, and I get it, and that can still happen, but I don't think people want to get told, and because of all this information, and I don't know if it's a good thing or not. I think it's a good thing. Like, people don't want to be like, well, I know what everyone's playing, so I can play the same deck, but I have to play it better than somebody else, right? Like, they don't want to take it upon themselves to like know that they have to play better to be at the top, right? Like, they want to bring the deck that no one knows about, so they don't have to, play better than everyone else, like using the same deck. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow, but I mean, isn't it kind of better that you do know? And I'm kind of arguing the other side a little bit, that all the decks out there and you can bring that same deck but play it better than everybody else.
Well, that's the Spike mentality, right?
Right, right. So I don't know, but let's move to fish mail. Pretty wrap things up on a good note. We always get some interesting fish mail to lighten the mood. But I mean, I'm already super hyped about Modern Masters 2015, so I'm already in a great mood.
Had me at damnation.
Yeah,
the one card I refused to pay $60+ for a 4-mana Wrath. So send your questions in on Twitter to hashtag MTGFishmail at MTGGoldfish, and we'll answer them on air. So first question from at JK Donati. Do you think WotC should start using game clocks like chess on Moto at GPs and PTs to prevent slow play and draws?
I have always thought that would be a good idea.
Yes.
The problem is, I don't know if it's even possible to implement that with how a game of Magic works. So in theory, yes. In practice, I don't know if it could really work.
I think it could work.
The problem is you have so many...
Same thing, right?
Like, you have so many phases and interactions with it going back and forth in a game of Magic. With chess, it's like your turn, hit the clock, turn over, hit the clock. There would be like 10 or 20. Could you imagine a counterspell war with chess clocks where you're like, oh, okay, cast something, goes on the stack, hit my clock. You like think for a second, cast something, I got to hit the clock. It would just, I don't know if it would work out in practice. There's so many back and forth interactions in Magic.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, I think it could work in terms of gameplay. Like, we do this today. You pass the turn with your hand. You wait for your opponent to counterspell or whatever. So you could just press the clock. The real question is, can you bring like 5,000 chess clocks and set them out at the Grand Prix? I think logistically, there's a problem. And you might say, well, if you're at the feature match area, you get the chess clock, but when you're not, you don't. And then that just makes all kinds of weirdness. Like the top 8 could have the chess clock. So I think it's more of a logistics thing rather than players playing with the clock. Because I think you can, find a system that actually works with 2 players and a clock. But tournament, we already have $90 Grand Prix and stuff. It's going to be like $2,000 Grand Prix if they have to every event. Next question from Eric Judd 111. With Death Shadow Jund, or whatever it's called, on the rise, what are alternatives to Mishra's Bauble?
There aren't any.
I don't think there is any.
Especially with Pro Band.
Oops.
Oh. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that has that. It's pretty unique ability on that card, or just a unique card in general. I don't think you can find a substitute.
I mean, that's...
Pray and hope it's in Modern Masters 27.
What's that? What like the Codex Shredder?
The big thing is you need it to go to the graveyard to turn on Delirium. Like that's one of the key interactions of the deck. Is not only is it card free, but it triggers Delirium. So I don't think there's another card that does that in Modern, but maybe it'll show up in Modern Masters 2015. Like, that's the reason it's so expensive, is there really aren't good substitutes for it.
And it's from Cold Snap.
I guess you could play an A, like Chromatic Star, Chromatic Sphere. It's not as good, but in theory, you play it on turn 1, you get your mana back. Like, that could be a bad substitute, but it might do the same thing.
Next question from Yanao. Solus as the focus of Amonkhet. Do we get Masterpiece Planeswalkers? Would help sell a lot of packs.
Yeah, I'm starting to lean towards yes. I originally thought it might be gods, but I could see Planeswalkers. I think they're kind of like leading us down that path.
I think it's too soon. I think that's their trump card, and I think it's too soon to pull out the Masterpiece Planeswalkers.
Yeah, but
they went with lands, the boringest, the boringest thing you could do, right? Lands, and then you got artifacts. You can't just jump to the best card type. At Maxiwawa, please talk about renting cards at Mana Traders. Seth meant on stream. Implications for the future.
All right.
Seth, do you want to just briefly introduce what Mana Traders is so that people know what we're discussing?
Okay, Mana Traders is a MTGO bot site that sells cards on Magic Online. They started their own subscription program where you pay them X dollars a month from like 10 on the low end up to 60, I think, on the high end. And you can essentially borrow cards from them. I think the highest amount is 700 all the way down to like 100 at the lowest amount, depending on how much you pay for your subscription. So you borrow a deck, play with it for a while, trade those cards back in, and then you can borrow more cards with the credit you have. So that's the basic theory of this, is a subscription-based model for Magic Online. One thing that enables is the potential for short-selling Magic cards. You could borrow the cards that you think are going to go down in value, immediately sell them to another bot for full price, wait for the price to drop, say the card gets reprinted or something, rebuy copies at the new lower price, and return your loan order. So that would be one potential. However, I have talked to a couple of people on stream that have tried this, and they had big issues with the cap. Like, even though it says the maximum is, like, say, $700, they were starting them off at a really low credit amount, and then you get a little bit more each month. Like, your credit limit goes up. So for a lot of people, it wasn't worth it because their starting credit amount was so far below the maximum that they couldn't even borrow a full deck for a format. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you decide to try it.
What a way for Wizards to rein that back in. They just made it subscription-based. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time. I know that there's like issues with the secondary market and how that all shakes out. But man, wouldn't it just be easy for them to get like, you know, $30 a month or something, $25 a month just from everybody from Moto? It's clearly these people are doing it.
Yeah, I heard from other bot owners that they think it is actually underpriced. Assuming you can get the full amount of credit, that the price that Mana Traders is charging is actually cheap for the benefit you're getting. So,
is that right? Because it looks expensive to me on paper. If you're paying $60 a month just to swap decks, like even a $700 deck, that's 10%, which is basically the spread you get buying and selling cards on Moto. So unless you're actually someone like Seth who has to play a new deck like every 30 minutes, like I can't see this actually working for you, especially since the overlap of decks. Like once you have the staples of a format, you know, the cost of a new deck is not actually $700 or whatever, but it's only, you know, $100 because a lot of the staples are shared.
I will say the best part of this is they have a $10 a month plan, and the maximum is 100 tickets, which is essentially the Budget Magic subscription. So if you want to play each and every Budget Magic deck that we make, you could get this $10 a month subscription every week, borrow the latest Budget Magic deck, test it out, play it for the week, then next week trade it in and get a new one for $10, which that is actually a pretty good deal.
But if you buy the deck, you make money due to the Saffron Olive
but what if people aren't like into don't have the time for that?
Have the time for what?
Like to buy everything, piece everything back out to the bots, and like do all that whole thing. This sounds like something for someone like me, where it's like I really don't care to be. I'd rather just pay the $10 and play the deck.
The mechanics are the same, I think. Because if you buy from a deck from a bot, you actually just get the whole deck, and then you can just sell the whole deck back. So it does come down to price, I think, or maybe peace of mind. Like you don't need to worry about what you're selling at, or you know how much you paid, but you just know that you get a subscription fee, right?
That's one of the positives I heard from Reddit people that had used it is I don't have to worry about my cards getting reprinted or going down in value. Like I just do this and I don't have any of those secondary marketing concerns because I don't want to deal with MTG finance. So this is good for me.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've been saying this whole time. You pay like a one-time fee. I would play MTGO with impunity. I mean, I wouldn't have to worry about anything.
Well, go test it out, Chaz, and give us a review next week.
All right.
You're gonna have to test it out for a couple months though to ramp up your spending allowance.
Hopefully it doesn't crash, but yeah.
All right. Next question from Daniel Ferris regarding Magic the Gatewatch movie. Can you watch the trailer for Doctor Strange and not think MTG?
What's Doctor Strange?
Come on.
What? Seth.
Come on.
I don't remember putting that in any of my decks, so I don't know what it is.
Oh my god. I don't know, Chad. What do you think? When I watched it, it didn't really spark MTG in my mind. At least not the same way Power Rangers did.
Well, that's because I think you and I we've known Marvel characters for so long. Like Doctor Strange, I didn't think of anything but Doctor Strange.
I guess that's a planeswalker, and then he's planeswalking.
Yeah, he's a sorcerer. So I mean, that would pretty much be planeswalking in a nutshell with everything that he's done. I mean, to me, I get that there's like thousands upon thousands of comics, and all these characters are really fleshed out. And I know there was like a Reddit thread saying like they don't like where the story's going. And I know you don't like the Gatewatch, Seth, but it's like, what else do you push? Like, what else do you push in the game? Like random legends? You know, they don't make books anymore. Like who's gonna be like so like amped about? I'll just use like the cons, like I don't know, like Sirach the Dragon Caller. Like, can you really get behind Sirach the Dragon Caller and then you never see that character again?
No, it's got to be the Brothers War. It's got to be the discovery of mana, right? And people would actually
no one knows who those people are, though.
You don't need to know, right? It's just a generic fantasy where these people discover magic, right? Because you don't have magic, right? And people would actually understand that as opposed to, oh look, it's Jace Bellerin. Who the hell's Jace Bellerin? And he's drawing some cards from a brainstorm for some reason. Like, who's gonna understand any of this? Yeah, right?
I guess you never had that issue with like comic characters because like they've been around for like 30 years, but you know,
like if you wanted to watch a CG filled action superhero, you know, trope movie, are you gonna watch Magic the Gathering, which you never heard of, or will you watch, you know, some Marvel intellectual property or some DC Comics or basically anything else. Like you can't compete on that level. You need to compete somewhere else, which is basically fantasy and magic and something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard pulled it off. They made a movie. It didn't wasn't
Did
terrible.
they? I thought Warcraft kind of bombed.
Yeah, obviously
Warcraft
it's
is a
not
way more known franchise
Yeah,
than Magic.
I think the Rotten Tomatoes the last time I checked, I think it was under 50%, but don't quote me. But I watched it as someone who knows the Warcraft lore just from playing the Warcraft games back on my Macintosh, and I enjoyed it. It was fine.
Yeah. And it was an origin story, right? It kind of showed you
yes, it's pretty
where
much
the
an
orcs came
origin
from.
story.
So.
Yes.
So I don't know. I think it needs to be an origin story, or I don't know, like Chandra gaining her spark or something like that. It cannot be the Gatewatch versus Nicol Bolas.
I don't think you can jump
cheesy.
right in. Yeah, we've kind of talked about this. I don't think you could jump into the Gatewatch now that I think about it.
All right, next question. Also from Daniel Ferris. We need to kickstart a documentary about Saffron Olive trying to win a tournament with his Marvelous Paradox deck.
Okay.
That would be a long documentary, I'm afraid.
All right, next question. At a Big King 318. About to get into legacy. Should I go with Infect, Red Black Reanimator, Pox, or is there a better choice?
I mean, it kind of depends on your play style that you enjoy.
Yeah.
I think Infect is the highest tier of those decks, followed by Reanimator, then Pox. That would be my ranking, but their play styles are very different, so I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I think from a financial perspective, if that's part of the equation for your choice, I think Reanimator's cheaper.
Pox has got to be cheaper, right?
Maybe Pox is the cheapest, but it might be the least competitive.
Pox is not too competitive, so unless you really love that turn 1
Yeah.
Dark Ritual Liliana into a daze, that's what usually happens. But I don't know, it doesn't share cards with any other archetype. Even Red Black Reanimator doesn't share that many cards. Whereas Infect, you're picking up tropical islands, you're picking up fetch lands that are useful. So you have more staple that you can use for other legacy decks. So if you really have no preference, I would say Infect, because Infect is actually a decent deck. You have tons of footage from Tom Ross playing it, and it actually shares staples with the rest of the format. Whereas the other two decks are more kind of niche, and once you build that deck, that's it. You want to build another deck, you're paying full price. Next question from Viper Johnny B. What are the chances of enough answers being printed that they unban cards in the future?
In Standard, probably 0 if that's what that's in reference
Yeah,
to.
I
In
don't-
I think
Modern,
it's standard. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
Modern
that's Standard,
probably
yeah.
maybe, but Standard, I don't think there's any chance we see cards get unbanned.
Yeah,
Because of
there's-
rotation, too. There's a solid end date. It's not like
Yeah.
5 years from now they could unban them, so...
Yeah, I just don't think they're far enough along that you're going to see the answers before the cards just said just simply rotate.
And if
the
they knew...
the window's too short for them to
Yeah.
do anything.
And if they really thought they had great answers coming, they probably just wouldn't have banned them in the first place and been like, oh, this problem's going to solve itself in a set or two.
All right, next question. 10.3K for round 12 of Modern Open versus 6.7K for Standard GP Final. Should WotC be embracing Modern more?
I mean, you could look at it as Modern isn't embracing it; it's already doing well on its own.
And I mean, there's some context to those numbers. It was a European GP, so the most well-known American players that you might be following were more likely to actually be at the Open. The common names that people might be following, it was Cedric and Patrick, rather, that were doing the coverage, and they're like, people tune in just to watch them, compared to a couple of random European broadcasters that not everyone is familiar with. So I think there's some other reasons that people trended towards Modern this weekend instead of Standard.
All right. Next question from @randomkeho. MTG players love to complain. Because of it, is there such a thing as a perfect set? If so, can you describe it?
It starts with Blood Moon, continues on to Stasis, maybe a Humility. No, there's no perfect set that I don't believe.
If I had to choose one, it would be the first Ravnica block because it was part of two amazing standards.
For the
If
perfect
Reddit
set,
was bigger, if the internet was more developed for Magic, people would have found a way to complain.
So,
Oh,
And
yeah,
mark my words, like no matter how much we
You're
love
probably
Modern
right.
Masters 2017 right now, by the end of spoiler season, there'll be plenty of complaints.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think there's just always complaints, no matter what.
Well,
And
that's
there's
why
no purpose.
I put more credence
That because
into
of-
Wizards. Like, I understand they listen to players, and Modern Masters 2017 is obviously a byproduct of that. They put in cards that people want, makes them happy. But more often than not, I'm gonna, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, and we do have our critiques of Wizards, and this is just coming as players, but I do think they generally make good decisions, and you can, you have data to prove that the game's still alive. And if they constantly listen to the players on everything, like I don't think it would be that successful.
Yeah, we'll get corporate speak. So the most perfect set is the one that makes the most money. And
Yeah.
given that every standard set has made more money than the previous one, then they're more perfect. I think that's the way Wizards looks at it. And given how much we like to complain, I think that's the only real way we can do it. Because I don't know, when standard is perfectly balanced, there's not a Reddit post every 5 minutes talking about how perfect standard is. But if standard is slightly out of tune, like every 5 minutes is a new meme about how bad standard is. And that's just kind of how people are and how the internet works.
That really is true.
Next question. At AJ Hewitt, did you all go to college? Where and what was your first major? What did you think you were going to do with your life?
I have a bachelor's in fine art and a master's in fine art.
I have a bachelor's in psychology and was going to go on to grad school, or was considering going to grad school, when I just kind of fell into doing magic content stuff. So I'm glad I did.
I have a bachelor's of software engineering. Yes, it is actually a bachelor's of software engineering, which is not typical because it's usually of science or math. And yeah, I kind of just fell into goldfish. I made goldfish one day, then it took off, and here we are. Next question from @mean_pork. If somebody was building a deck to troll each one of you, what card would they need to choose to troll you the most?
Blue cards.
It's very easy to troll Chaz, though.
All the blue cards.
Oh man, I don't even know. Probably infect in general is what gets me the most, I think.
Honestly, if you really want, if this is just a quick origin story, if you want to know why I love green so much, this is actually a true story. My friend, we used to, go, around to the stores in New York. We went to like Kingston and all this stuff. And during Odyssey and like Onslaught, I think, made this deck with Patron Wizard and like literally all these wizards that basically just counter everything. Like Counterspell, you had Force Spike, you had Patron Wizard. I don't even really know the other wizards. I think there was like this generic like wizard in Onslaught that was like a 2-mana 1/2 or something like that. And it was actually a pretty strong deck. Maybe it was just strong because I was terrible at Magic at that point, but I was just like, I can't do anything about this. He just literally counters everything. And then he has Patron Wizard that counters everything. Like, what am I supposed to do about this? And between me and my friend, we figured out that there was like 2 cards at that time that completely hoses green, and it was Kavu Chameleon and Skragnoth. I was like, we're doing it. And lo and behold, you can't do anything as a blue deck against Skragnoth. Can't be countered pro blue.
So for me, if you want to troll me, you build a commander deck with old cards with a full text box. I think on Commander Clash was Word of Command. I think Tomer played against me, and it's that instant where we didn't even know what it did. And we like, it was cast, and we couldn't tell if it was a moto fail or not because literally did not know what the card was supposed to do even after reading the text box. And there are quite a few old Magic cards that do this. It's just the text box. It's like size 6 fonts. It's full of words, and you're like, I don't even know what this does. Just hopefully something happens.
Yeah.
Good old card. Before each cast, do you guys intentionally choose different sides to an argument, or do you disagree that much?
It's all organic.
Wow. It's all organic. Yeah, it's a lot of this. I mean, we're 110 episodes in, and a lot of it is off the cuff. And no, we don't pick sides.
Blame Chaz. Always blame Chaz.
What?
Disagree with Chaz to get a heated argument. But sometimes we play devil's advocate. But then it's kind of obvious we play devil's advocate. But most of the time, and we tend to agree a lot. We just pick on certain points where we disagree. Next question from Anonymous. I played competitive Magic for a few years. I've had success winning 1K events and top 8s of SCG Opens. My question is about concessions. I was recently playing at an RPTQ, and deep in the tournament, I played against a pro. We ended up being tight in time in Game 3. When we were done playing, if I wanted to concede after showing me his hand, and I responded, "No, do you want me to concede?" And then no one conceded. There was a draw. And afterwards, his fellow teammate told me it was a courtesy to concede to a pro if I knew he had me beat. Parenthesis, he didn't. Is this something common in MTG, or is it just bullying?
Wait, so your opponent expected them to concede because they were a pro?
Yeah, his team,
so
his fellow teammates.
So it was basically, it was coming to a draw. The pro wanted a concession. He showed the hand that he thought, he was going to win, and you had no chance. And then the submitter thought that wasn't a winning hand and didn't concede, and then there was a draw because no one wanted to concede. And then the teammate came afterwards and said you should concede if you're beat because they're a pro.
Well, I think conceding because they're pro is silly. Like, I think that idea is that's not true. I mean, I guess the thinking is they actually pro points might matter to them when they don't matter as much to you, but still, I don't think that's true. On the other hand, I personally, if I feel like I'm beaten in that situation, I may very well just concede. If I know I'm going to lose anyway, I might just concede out of niceness to my opponent, regardless of whether they're a pro or not.
Yeah, if there was a memo that was a thing, I certainly did not get that.
Yeah, I don't like the concession part, and I really hate it. Even if they have you quote unquote beat, it relies on them playing perfectly. What if they misplay or whatever, or what if you didn't evaluate the situation correctly? So I don't really like conceding. I might concede if I'm playing for nothing and they're playing for top 8 or something like that. But to have that be expected, I think is wrong.
Yeah.
Then you concede if you want, but to have that expectation that someone's going to concede to you, I think is wrong. Especially a teammate coming up and saying that. Now that's just like gang bullying and stuff.
Yeah, that's not really cool. I've never even heard of that.
And it shouldn't be because they're a pro, right?
Yeah, definitely not. I mean,
if you want to make arguments of, your hand was better or whatever, I guess you could go down that path. But if you're a pro, then play faster, man. Like, if you know what you're doing, then don't get to the draw, right? So I don't really like that aspect of competitive Magic.
Yeah, and again, if you're playing for nothing and they're playing for something, one thing, and I've been doing that for quite some time. I mean, since I was a beginning player. I mean, if it's mutually beneficial or you're not playing for something, you just want to be nice, that's fine. But it certainly shouldn't be expected.
Yeah. Last question from Valor Ruthin. We had several questions similar to this, but I've heard a lot of complaints about standard. How do you evaluate a good standard format, or if it's a bad standard format? Is there criteria to use, or is it basically just intuition and asking, am I fun? Or am I having fun?
I think that's, and while it might be an obvious point, the last point is pretty much the best. I mean, if you're having fun. I mean, I may not like, it's all subjective. I may not like a format that other people seem to love, like Collected Company. I'm sure some people out there who love Collected Company, band company versus band company, maybe someone loved it. So what am I to say that they shouldn't enjoy themselves? I do think there's certain, aspects of standard formats that a lot of players agree on, mostly just like, how many viable archetypes there are, and if it's just boring to watch or this, that, and the other thing. I don't, and this was obviously a question before, I don't think you can just have it perfect across the board. Although for me, there has been a couple perfect formats in the past that I can draw back to, but I'm certainly not expecting every standard to mimic those going forward. Like, I'm not looking for every standard format to mimic like Time Spiral Rav or Kamigawa Rav. Those are the two best to me.
Yeah, for me personally, it's always, am I having fun? Like, some of the best standard matches I remember are just the mono black devotion days, where it's just mono black mirrors left and right. Terrible viewing experience, but very fun gameplay in my mind. But in general, I think when I'm evaluating the format, it's really the diversity of decks and whether, week in and week out, are we seeing the same thing? It could be the perfectly balanced standard where you have rock, paper, scissors, but there's only 3 decks, and the entire season we only see 3 decks. I think that makes for a poor experience. Even though theoretically it's balanced, players will get bored of the format relatively quickly. Players love seeing new decks come up and kind of dethrone the existing king. So it has something to do with brewing and diversity of decks. Yeah. And I don't think anyone ever complains that, there's a new deck this week, this is terrible, but we always get the complaint of, Mardu vehicles again? Oh, how fun. Smuggler's Copter? Yeah, we've only seen 80 copies of those. So it has something to do with brewing. And
I think for me it's a mixture. Like, on a personal level, it's all about if I'm having fun. Like, I honestly don't think our current standard in an objective from an objective perspective is actually a very great standard format. It's kind of boring, the same decks, but personally I'm having a ton of fun because I can play all these janky combos that aren't going to be tier 1, but they're competitive enough that I can play them. So on a personal level I like it, but I think there are data points to look at, which you guys mentioned some of them, like how many decks are there, the most dominant cards. Are you seeing the top card in the format being in 40% of decks, 80% of decks, things like that, the diversity among the cards? I think price plays into it to some extent too. Like, are there cheap decks that people can actually play, or is it like Battle for Zendikar where you have this big price barrier? So I think there are like objective data points to look at as well. But when it comes right down to it, on a personal level, the only thing that really matters is, are you having fun? And if you are, it doesn't. None of that other stuff really matters personally to you.
All right, that's all of our fish meal for this week. Thank you everyone for sending them in.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Those were some great questions. To go a little bit more on your points that just out the door, Frank Lepore I think it was on Facebook, was the first original message that 83 cards out of like 1,408 cards in standard are seeing standard play right now competitively, which is kind of interesting.
I think that's slow. I think that's less diverse than normal, but I'd have to like actually research old formats to say 100%, but I'm pretty confident that that's less diversity than most formats.
That definitely felt low to me. But yeah, objectively, it's like, but you could still like decks from the format. Like, I personally like the Black-Green Constrictor list. That's just a deck I would love to play. There's all cards that I like in it. Like, I like the Constrictor, I like Rishkar, I like Ballista, I like what's the demon? Mind Rack Demon. So to me, that's fine. To other people, like, they don't want to see that every single time, and I get that. But yeah, I mean, it's all about having fun. I think the closest thing to the perfect standard was there's another one in there that was pretty good.
If you say Ravnica again, Chaz.
No. It was Innistrad and RTR. Like, right up until the very end. I mean, I get, like, Bonfire. Like, it was pretty expensive. I mean, like, Bonfire of the Damned, and you had like Thragtusk, and that wasn't really cool. But there was actually a lot of decks now that I look back.
You know why? Because Thragtusk made everything viable.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm dying. Thragtusk, I've stabilized. Good.
Dying to Thragtusk, I play my own Thragtusk, I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's those stabilizing cards. It's like Blood Moon. It's like when you slap down the blood jank you want afterwards because you got the game on cruise control. So it's like you Thragtusk, you're like, I'm good now. Now I can do whatever I want. I can play my own game plan.
Yeah.
So you need those stabilizing cards, and once you have enough of them, then it becomes super diverse.
Yeah. I mean, Snapcaster Mage and all. I mean, I actually had a good time, and the Aristocrats list didn't have thread. I mean, there was other decks that like didn't have those marquee cards that did well. Yeah. And then at the end, it kind of really got like warped.
Good mana.
Yeah,
you need fetch lands in standard. That's what it's saying.
No. I think that's a good place to end it off. Gentlemen, we're going to have a lot more to talk about. We're super hyped. I mean, I did not see this coming. I'm glad. This is really a huge boon to players. All right, so that's going to be the MTG Goldfish Crew signing out for this week. We will talk to you all next time.